Welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. We are at the second day of the European Financial Congress in Sopot, and I'm joined by Paweł Borys, who is the managing partner of MCI Capital. He's also the former head of the Polish Development Fund. And today we want to talk about private equity investments on the Polish market. We want to demystify those terms and find out how Poland is doing on the market. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good afternoon.
So I wanted to begin talking about the elections here in Poland. We have the results now. And I wanted to ask you how this might actually influence the government's economic agenda.
The most positive information for investors that the elections are over because it's created a lot of uncertainty in the market. The reaction was moderate, slightly negative in the equity market because most of the indices went slightly down. However, currency, when we look at the currency, bond market and equities, it's more stable. Of course, investors are concerned how this cohabitation between the government and the new president will look like, whether there will be a lot of deadlocks, which always creates some uncertainty. But we will see. I believe that, the key risk is on the fiscal policy, because there is a huge political tension. And of course, we need to spend a lot for military. There is a relatively high budget deficit, and nobody is ready to make difficult decisions. And of course, at some point of time, we need to consolidate public finances, reduce the deficit, which would be a little bit challenging in this environment.
Yesterday, Poland's finance minister, Andrzej Gomański, he announced a very significant merger between PZU and Pekao SA. And I wanted to ask about your reactions to that, because it's been quite a busy time. We've had a lot of announcements regarding mergers. What are your thoughts?
Some time ago, I had the opportunity to acquire Pekao SA from UniCredit. I believe that this strategy of creation of the largest Polish financial group make a lot of sense. It would increase the effectiveness of managing the capital, so it should allow to generate extra 20 billion Polish zlotys, or roughly 5 billion euro of extra capital from this merger. However, it will be complex transactions. It will take a lot of time, but it would create very visible, strong financial institution on the European landscape with two significant businesses of insurance and banking, where there's a lot of synergy, because of course bank assurance model is quite popular in the financial sector. So generally I see the announcement very positive.
I want to move on to private equity now. Bain & Company assessed that the number of Poland's buyouts on the private equity market has increased by 50% in 2024. So that makes Poland the largest player on the Central and Eastern European markets, owning 60% of the transactions. What are your thoughts on that?
Polish economy currently is really the largest economy in the Central Eastern Europe, with more than $80 billion of GDP. In terms of the volume of all transaction and investment, Poland represents 50% of the total market in CE region. Of course, when we think capital markets, typically we think about stock exchange, but we have to remember that in more developed countries, markets such private equity, venture capitals play a very important role. We are talking about investment in fastly growing, innovative companies, sometimes created from the scratch and becoming unicorns within few years. Unicorns, I mean the companies with market capitalization above $1 billion. We have this type of stars from Poland already, which is Allegro, the Planner. And so private equity market plays a very important role. Unfortunately, after COVID, after pandemic, there was some visible slowdown in transaction activity across the region. After the start of war in Ukraine, unfortunately, a lot of US investors pull out from the region. There was some capital flight. However, currently we see that the sentiment is improving, and we see very attractive companies which are growing, are very innovative. And as MCI, we currently hold 10 very innovative digital brands in e-commerce software, which have the potential to become really European leaders. They expand also abroad.
So you've had the opportunity to see the developments of the private equity market here in Poland. What is your general assessment of where Poland stands?
Unfortunately, historically, Poland has not creating, as other countries in the region, the stable base of institutional investors in this market. So there is pension funds or insurance companies are not very much active in that market, which is very common in Sweden, UK, and then Western countries. So for sure, we need to improve the local base of institutional investing in private equity, but we're also talking about huge infrastructure investments in Poland, in energy infrastructure. So this money from pension funds, insurance could also be invested via infrastructure funds, for example, to increase this financing potential for in private equity on infrastructure funds. So generally, it is very important to promote that we have in Poland very strong capital pillar of the pension system, which is also active in private equity or infrastructure investments.
But it sounds like there are a lot of obstacles that still need to be overcome. Obviously, Poland was quite late to the game when it comes to global players. So how do we go about it in the best way possible?
When I was the CEO of the Polish Development Fund, we created fund-of-fund activity, and we have invested in 50 venture capital or private equity funds as a so-called anchor investor. Currently, the Ministry of Finance announced the new program called Innovate PL, and the key objective of the program is exactly to facilitate the investment of local institutional investor into this asset class. It required some regulatory changes, which, as it was announced here in Sopot, should be implemented within the next couple of months. So I hope that this money from pension funds, insurance companies will be really utilized and will generate significant inflow, which will translate into new investment in private equity infrastructure.
If you were to give us an honest assessment, are we in a situation where there are private equity funds but not enough companies to invest in, or too many companies and not enough private equity funds?
Not enough private equity funds. So in this market, we have venture capital, which typically invest in startups. And here the capital is present. And in the last few years, this Polish venture capital funds invested in more than 600, 700 new startups. Then we have a growth capital and buyout funds, so larger transaction, but still mid-market. And we have here a limited availability of the capital. So very few funds which are active. MCI is among these funds. We specialize in new technology, but we see that there is a limited number of funds. So the capital is not so much available here. And then we have big multinational private equity firms, but they're looking for transaction above $500 million. There is not so many this type of transaction in CE region. So here the capital is available, but Polish economy stands with small and medium enterprises, so we need the financing. We need to strengthen the private capital pillar in mid-market transactions.
So I'm going to ask again, how do we make that happen?
As I said, we need more funds. This fund investor. We have Polish Development Fund. We have PZU, which is more active also currently in this asset class. We have PPK program, which is a new capital pillar of the pension system, which is designed also to be able to invest in private equity. So if more and more funds will be active in the sector, this number of funds should grow and the capital should be more available.
I'm going to ask a question about MCI Capital. When you look for companies to invest in, what sort of things do you seek out?
Typically, we see
eligible.
Yes, typically we invest between 25 to 50 million euro in single investments. So these are companies with almost 100 million US dollar of total value. We are looking for growing companies, 15-20%, companies which are already profitable and they have some technology angle. So whether this is e-commerce or software, typically we see 15 this type of transaction in the region per year. We invest in 2-3 projects. The other challenge in this new technology sector is that, we have a lot of talent in the labor market. However, still, the very talented people typically working in the service model for foreign customers, not creating their own product, their own companies. However, there is more and more very innovative entrepreneurs which have the drive to set up their own company and grow. There is more and more mature ecosystem for innovation. So we hope that in coming years, this number of companies which are available for investment will grow.
When it comes to the Polish private equity market, how far off are we when it comes to the global players, and who are the global players?
Of course, when you look at the numbers, in Sweden or in UK, the volume of the market and the value of the market is, 8 to 10 times bigger than in Poland. So a long way to go to catch up with these more mature markets. Of course, in Poland, we have almost all global investment private equity firms doing transaction. One of the most active is, for example, TBC. Recently, we have also the acquisition of Velobank via Cerberus, which is one of the leading US private equity firm active in the banking sector. So they are looking for opportunities. But the challenge is, as I said, in the mid-market, smaller transaction, which the global players are not looking at.
And in terms of the opportunities that lie ahead for Poland in the next 5 to 10 years, where should Poland focus?
Poland still is growth story. So over the last 10 years, we've been growing at a twice higher rate compared to Western Europe, approximately 3.7% of real GDP growth. So there is a still positive growth momentum. And of course, the Western Eurozone is a little bit stagnating. So from this perspective, this is very attractive place to invest. We have very well educated labor force. We have improved the ecosystem for innovation. So these new sectors of the economy are also developing. The obvious challenge is aging population, of course, which will be more and more visible in the next 5 to 7 years. But I'm quite positive on the Polish economy. Currently, we are at the 80% level of productivity and incomes compared to European Union average. So there is still some catch-up potential. We need to invest more. We need to have more mature capital markets, but we have very sound banking system. So we have relatively low level of indebtedness. So economy fundamentals are relatively sound. So I hope that the next 5-7 years will still be a good moment for the economy.
Okay. Paweł Borys, managing partner at MCI Capital and former head of the Polish Development Fund. Thank you so much for speaking. And that brings us to the end of World Talks here from the European Financial Congress in Sopot. Thank you for joining us and stay tuned for more on TVP World.